Hello, and this is the evaluation for my opening sequence of Crush. The first thing I'm going to consider is how my sequence uses, develops, and challenges forms and conventions of real media products. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the titles. You can see here they're kind of ripped up and they boast this kind of gritty feel of social realist films. You can see this in other films like Bullet Boy and Summer's Town. They might have something simple, but they also have something kind of gritty and edgy. I've put it the other way around. This is my second shot. This gives a good, clear insight to the location. There's kind of urban landscapes you see in these kind of social realism films, and I try to keep that on board. Like you have Somers Town kind of train stations and gritty places like that, and Shane Meadows in particular uses public buildings, so I try to use mine with a multi-story. I think the opening sequence kind of opens up the whole story with a large set of enigma codes. I mean, it doesn't leak too much at once. I think this relates back to authentic and real media text. I mean, if you think about This Is England, you never hear about racism straight away, and gun violence isn't leaked straight away with Bullet Boy. So I think kind of opening it up quite bluntly and ending it quite bluntly is quite suited to the genre that I picked. I think the title of the film, Crush, again, straight away, it's enigma codes. I mean, what does crush me really mean? And I think instantly an audience would think, oh, it's going to be kind of a boy-girl relationship or something like that. But crush is kind of a subtle drugs reference. I mean, I think it's good to keep the references subtle at this early point in the film. Again, social realism titles, they kind of leak the film content, but normally on the edge of a negative issue. So Somers Town kind of hints at this kind of regional dysphoria, almost like this boy owns this town. And This Is England again is the extreme xenophobia and racism, but it's so subtle at this point. I think the ripped up titles again kind of accentuate the meaning of the word while boasting grungy conventions of social realist texts. I think this film kind of really boasts this genre in a way that's really authentic to real media products. I mean, the opening holds this kind of gritty feel. Gritty is really the word to describe social realism. Then it's also kind of got these social cliques. And even if it's not a clear establishment of class attitudes, I think this lack of class makes it a more accessible and realistic media product. I used sound in this opening sequence to really kind of boast the genre to a good extent as well. I think the kind of build up and the long silence creates a mood of like isolation, and the score kind of being lower and slow and kind of repetitive. I think again boosts this mood that's really being really boasted by the characters. Yeah, I think the background noise as well is only predominant in the party shots you can see here. And again, there's plenty of enigma codes. No real film would give everything away at first. So you wonder why is he actually sitting there and where has he come from and what the relationship between the two characters that you see are. And I think that boasts the genre in an authentic way. So at this point, you finally see that the second character is introduced and the dialogue comes in. I think, again, social realism isn't about creating something kind of aesthetically pleasing, even if it might be. I think it's just about trying to make it kind of blunt and realistic. And I think this lack of kind of romanticism you might see in Hollywood films makes this film more realistic to what a social realist film is actually meant to be like. I mean, the male character, I'd say, is more subversive to his concrete city surroundings. A bit like the way that Mia in Fish Tank starts the film in that mood. So I think this really makes it like an opening sequence of what a real social realist film might be like. And the female character establishes more of an obvious personality at first, but again, this kind of extrovert that she might be isn't boasted too clear at first. I was trying to keep honest to the genre and honest to trying to make it as much like an opening sequence as I possibly could. So special effects was the kind of thing I could have considered, but when I really think about the genre, it's not really entirely suited towards social realism. For that reason, I decided not to use any special effects and to keep it looking as realistic as possible. These characters represent a lack of social class in their costumes and props, apart from the casual drugs and drink and cigarettes you can see here. I think the lack of social class is represented, but I think this is authentic to the film that I'm trying to create. I mean, these characters are just everyday characters. So you've got her kind of in her dark kind of teenage gear, but she's actually the more lighter character of the two, and you have him who's really kind of cluttery and his stuff's everywhere, and that represents him well. So lastly, I'm going to talk about the editing and the camera work that I think is really authentic. Personally, I try to use kind of the sharp angles, and you can see all the lines draw your attention towards the characters in this shot in particular. If you look at kind of DIY independent films like Summer's Town, it's kind of got this shaky camera work, and I try to do that. And then, typical to social realism, my film is kind of slow and pace. A lot of shots with high duration, and I think this is like real media products.